everybody, it's Jay Roby. Got another video in the Ruy Lopez opening series that I've been doing, and this is going to focus on the Cozio defense. And I want to start off by saying that this was probably, well, without a doubt, this was the most difficult video so far in the series that I've had to make, simply because there's not a lot of information on the Cozio defense out there. So what I've done is I've used a variety of resources that I could find, including a recent paperback book for opening lines. I compared that with Ribka 3 analysis, and also a database of 4.1 million professional games. So what I'm trying to do is find some common themes in the moves played and the lines that follows, and it took a long time. Actually, it took a lot of work for this one, and it paid off because now I know some things about it that I didn't know before. And hopefully it'll start off some good discussion on the Cozio defense, because if you check some internet resources on it, there's really not a lot out there. Now, for those of you not familiar with the Ruy Lopez opening, it starts off with King's Pawn. Black plays its King's Pawn out to e5. White develops knight to f3. Black plays knight to c6, and then White plays bishop to b5. Now, this is the Ruy Lopez, otherwise known as the Spanish opening. And from this position there is a lot of variations that can happen and that can take place. But for this video we're focusing on the Cozio defense, which is when Black plays knight out to e7. Now, this is not a very common move. In fact, out of the database of 4.5 million games, it crops up at about 3,000 times. So it's definitely an opening defensive strategy from Black that doesn't have a lot of material on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 3 best moves for White in this position, and we're also going to take a look at Black's best moves in those lines. And like I said before, it's kind of a fusion of a bunch of different resources. So the 3 moves are as follows. The first move that we're going to look at is straight castling. So that will be the first move that we're going to take a look at. The next move that we're going to take a look at is knight to c3. And then after that, we're going to take a look at c3. So those are the 3 moves that we're going to look at in the Cozio defense. Now, those 3 moves are the strongest options that White has once Black plays knight to e7. So the first one we're going to look at is the castle maneuver. So White goes ahead and castles, and this position came up with some interesting data. It was by far the most played from White in this position, so it had a very high frequency and a pretty good winning score percentage, actually. Now from here, the next best move here for Black is pawn to g6, and from here White continues c3. So now c3 is played. Black plays the bishop up, getting it fianchettoed, and now White makes the push to d4. E takes, c takes. Black plays up to d5, ex d5, knight takes. Bishop to g5, attacking the queen. The queen goes to d6. Now the queen goes to d6 so that it's still protecting both knights. From here, White can check with the queen. Now it's actually a lot better to check with the queen here than the rook. What I found in some of the book lines that I was able to find from a printed variety, they had rook come out and do the check first. But I did some deep analysis, both in the table base, or database, sorry, and with the best chess engine in the world, and it liked queen to e2 better here for the check. Once queen blocks, queen can go now to d2. Black will castle, and White will play knight to c3. And in this position here, it's pretty good for White. Like, it's coming out of the opening, it's a comfortable position to be in. I've got 2 kind of reference numbers, but they're kind of irrelevant. But one, the engine had it about 0.35 in White's favor. A 1.0 would be like the equivalent of a pawn advantage, whereas a very in-depth analysis had it at about 0.27 at a depth of 16, which is about 5 minutes of think time. So, but the bottom line is using engines in the opening is kind of an irrelevant and mute point, but at least you know that you're not in a bad position. So that's the first option we're going to take a look at. So now I'm going to go back to knight to e7 here, and we're going to take a look at the next strongest move, which is knight to c3. Now, knight to c3 had the second highest frequency out of the professional players database, and the engine also gave it quite a favorable assessment at about a 0.3, and then with a deep think it was about a 0.19, so almost a 0.2. So just like the castle position, there's a lot of discrepancy in the engine compared to a more deeper analysis, but it's still in the positive. So that means that you're not really technically hurting yourself by playing knight to c3. In fact, knight to c3 is a very playable option in this position. Now I'm going to look at two lines here with knight to c3, because there's knight to c3 followed by g6 from black, and then there's knight to c3 followed by knight to g6. And we're going to take a look at both, because I want to emphasize not only the good moves for white in this position, but also the best move for black in the position as well. So as it turns out, knight to g6 is the first one I'm going to look at, and this is actually a lot more favorable to white in the long run. So the line would go as follows: knight to g6, and then white will play d4, ex d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and then queen takes, and then from here black will play c6, kicking the bishop back. White will bring the bishop back to e2, queen to b6, offering up the queen trade, and then queen to d3. And in this position, white stands quite a bit more favorable compared to the other line that we'll look at. So knight to g6 wouldn't be black's best move in this position, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you're a white player and you see knight to g6, you're going to have a little bit better of a chance to capitalize on your opponent's position going into the middle game and end game, as opposed to them playing g6. So now I'm going to go back and we're going to take a look at, after knight to c3, we're going to take a look at g6. Now when black plays g6, the best move for white would be still d4, ex d4, knight takes d4, and then bishop to g7. So black fianchettos the bishop along this nice diagonal here, attacking the knights. From here, white can simply play bishop to e3, black can castle, white can castle, and then from here, a6, attacking the bishop, bishop falls back to e2, and then d6 from black. So this is a little bit different here. Just kind of, opening up access to the bishop, and then from here h3. This would be an equal position. So, as a black player, once you see knight to c3, if you play g6, you'll probably have better positional chances in the long run, as opposed to playing the knight out to g6 in that position. So I found that interesting. Now I want to go back to knight to ge7, because now I want to take a look at pawn to c3. Now the line that was generated for after pawn to c3 was a6 by black, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to a4, and from here black plays g6, once again getting ready to fianchetto that bishop, putting it on a very strong diagonal. From here white castles, bishop to g7, so there goes a fianchetto. d4 is played by white, ex d4, cx d4, and then d5 is played by black. Now from here white can simply go bishop takes with check, black recaptures with the pawn, and then knight to c3, another development move, at which point black can castle. Now pawn to c3, out of the three options, so when we're looking at the castles and knight to c3, c3 actually scores the least amount in white's favor. So it's out of the three moves, it's pretty much the poorest of the three options. But again, I want to emphasize that all three options for white are pretty good in the long run, and they'll all lead to playable positions for white. So it's a very interesting defense played by black, because black has some definite lines in there for equality, which means that it's got a good shot at winning the entire game. So, I really enjoyed looking into the defense, and like I said, this was definitely the most difficult one of the Ruy Lopez videos that I've done so far. So hopefully you'll find some use in it. I'm going to put up the PGN on my blog, as I always do with the opening videos. You can take some time to look through the lines, but I should preface that this some of this analysis made use of the brand new Rybka 3 engine, which was released a few months ago. And if you haven't yet upgraded to Rybka 3, you might want to hold off. I've got a video in the works here talking about what I personally use and I've tried with the new Rybka 3 engine that you might find very useful. But when you compare Rybka 3 engine to, say, for example, the free engine Crafty, the new Rybka 3 has a 3150 ELO. Crafty has around a 2700. And to throw another wrench into the cogs of this video, some of the lines that Crafty thought were good for white, Ribka realized that, you know what, they're not that great. So it was very interesting. So if you do use an engine like Crafty to analyze some of these lines, it might actually be misguiding you a little bit in terms of positional strength. But like I said, I enjoy going over this video, and I'm looking forward to the comments and the feedback on the Cozio line. I think it is a solid option for black. It's definitely not as exciting and dynamic as some of the other Ruy Lopez opening lines for black. But it's also least explored when you compare it with the other ones, and that is can be a good thing, especially if you study it in a lot of detail. Alternatively, as white, there's some strong moves for white that you can play against the Cozio Defence. So it's really a dynamic and an uncharted waters, and I enjoyed going over it in the video, and I hope you guys found it useful too. So take care, hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next time.